I believe the average or median age there is like 18.5. So a very young workforce, which creates many opportunities for companies looking to expand. Where there are opportunities for, the brightest minds to work with, investors may have an opportunity to bring in some of their resources there.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Airdrie Inside. I am your host, Chris Glass, and I am here with Doreen Ayorech.
Yes.
Ayorech.
Ayorech.
I just practiced that about 20 times off camera. I think I got it pretty close.
You know what? You did very well. Yeah, that's very close. Thank you, Chris.
Well, welcome to the show. I was really excited when Britton told me a bit about your story, and then I stopped learning about it because I wanted to actually have the conversation about it with the camera going. So for our audience, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about Airdrie a little bit and what brought you to our city? I believe you said 13 years ago?
Yes. So thank you for having me on here. It's great to get to sit and chat with you. And so, yes, my husband and I moved to Airdrie in 2013. So wow. I believe we're just over 12 years. And so Airdrie, we were just talking about how Airdrie is just becoming so diverse, right. So much going on in the city. So we really enjoy that. And the part of Airdrie that we live in the northwest corner, we get to have a little bit of nature. There's all the open space, which nowadays it's hard to see.
Right.
So my name is Doreen, like Chris said, Doreen Ayorech, and I am a sister, somebody's daughter, I'm girlfriend and somebody's wife, and also an entrepreneur.
Okay. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot in one. So why don't we focus on the entrepreneur part? Talk to me about your business.
Yes. So Awello Strategic Concepts is a company that I started at 5 years ago now, in 2020. It's a company that really focuses on supporting businesses, so investors, developers looking to diversify into emerging markets. What we do essentially is bridge foreign markets. And so how we do that is through leveraging networks that we have. So we connect people to unfamiliar places, making it a little bit more of an easier transition.
Okay, so talk to me about that, because investing overseas or in other countries is already daunting enough for the average investor. How can you make it easier on them, and how can you make something that's very far away seem close enough to home to want to put your money in it?
Exactly. And so we focus heavily on Eastern Africa because we have the closest, the strongest network. I was born in Tanzania. Okay. So I'm half Tanzanian, half Ugandan. And so having that connection to the continent, that familiarity, and we know that when we're doing business, it's really good to have some familiarity, because otherwise, where do you start? Right. And so I feel blessed to have two brains, I look at it, this Canadian brain and the African brain. Right. And so where there are different challenges, we understand the solutions that are there. And so we make it a little bit easier by just facilitating introductions. Okay. Yeah.
So when did you move? You said Tanzania. When did you move from Tanzania?
I was born there. My family moved to Canada a long time ago in 88.
Okay. So during the Olympics?
Yeah, during the Olympics. So we first landed in Edmonton. So that's where I grew up. And then eventually moved to Calgary as an adult.
Okay. So I had a colleague at the company I used to work for. He lived in London. He was based out of London. Mm-hmm. And we were an aerospace tech company that I was working for at the time. And he was from South Africa. And he was talking to anybody who would listen about the opportunity that Africa presented, not only our company with airlines growing exponentially in Africa, but just as an investment vehicle as a whole. He was so sold on it that he became a bit of an evangelist about it in meetings. He's like, we need to spend more time with this airline because they're going to grow this much. And he had it all down. Why does Africa present such an opportunity?
Absolutely. Africa, one of the things is abundance of resources. Right. And so I'm not just talking about, the natural resources that are available, but also the people. Right. Africa has the youngest population. I believe the average or median age there is like 18.5. So a very young workforce, right. Which creates many opportunities for companies looking to expand. And also they're, brilliant minds. There's a lot going on there.
Right.
So there are really lots of opportunities. And I always say that capacity building. And
Right.
so where there are opportunities for, the brightest minds to work with, investors may have an opportunity to bring in some of their resources there.
Right. Now, how do you get past some of the I guess the negative connotation, some of the stereotypes about instability and that kind of thing when you're dealing with people's money, right? Because that's kind of the most sacred thing that you've got is your future financially. So how do you get around some of those concerns?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we try to do is de-risk.
Yeah.
In any markets, in any business that you do, there are risks. But I think one of the biggest mitigators is where we leverage networks that we have. And so if we can say that we can vouch, right, for whether it's an organization, a company, an individual, so that mitigates that risk. Because oftentimes, if you're going into a foreign market, anywhere, regardless of where it is, if you're going in blindly, then there's going to be so many unknowns. And one of the biggest things too, we really are advocates of is that cultural piece, really understanding culture. Because again, when you're going to do business, it's really good to get familiar with the people, because at the end of the day, we are connected to people.
Yeah,
absolutely. So risk mitigation is something that is very important to look at.
Well, I've always been a handshake relationship kind of guy, and I think that's usually your best way to do business. So
absolutely.
It's neat to hear that it's even globally that's a way to do things.
Absolutely. It's universal, especially when we're looking at the African continent. It's actually preferred.
Right.
Even though we do have access to technology. But if you can get on the ground, shake hands like you said, lock eyes, then you're already ahead.
I had a colleague, another colleague, Derek Taylor with Flight. They're going to enjoy all the shout-outs. Jacob and Derek, I'll say hi to you here. Derek used to go all the time to Africa, and he used to love all his trips there, and he closed so many deals there. And those relationships are 30 years later, he's still able to call people up and have conversations because they remember he went there and went and saw them face to face. So it's neat to see that's that kind of world over there.
Absolutely. Relationships are everything.
Yeah.
Very important to build those relationships. So one of the things, kind of back to your question about, risk and mitigating risk, is by getting connected to relationships that we have already made. So investors can leverage that.
Right. And it's not like risk is isolated to Africa. I mean, there's risks with investing in American companies now. Things that we would think would be kind of stable, never risky ventures. 2008 showed us that that's not where your money should go sometimes. So
absolutely.
So how does the process work? So if I'm an investor and I come to you, how do I go about putting my money into the field?
Exactly. So all of our, work is based on customization. Okay. So first we would have a discovery call, really get to understand what your business is, looking at your market entry strategy.
Right.
So most people have, they've done a little bit of their homework. So we want to know, what is your plan when you get onto the continent? Are you looking to hire locally? We want to know what your intentions are.
Right.
And so once we have an understanding of that, then we would customize a package for you. One of the things that I always say is you eventually need to get boots on the ground.
Right.
So as much as you're going to trust what we're saying, leverage our networks, we need you to get on the ground.
Right.
Our priority sectors that we look at is energy, renewable energy, because energy poverty right now is still something that is very serious on the continent.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we focus on. And also IT, communications.
Yeah.
So again, we need proper, infrastructure for communications, because we need that in order to do proper business.
And there's an interesting infrastructure IT opportunity there, because you can kind of skip over some of the crappier generations of tech that we still have in North America. Mm-hmm. I know we still haven't, in pockets of North America, sunsetted 3G as a network, yet right. You go to other parts of the world and it's been 5G for a very long time.
True.
So it does give you that opportunity to kind of leapfrog into the next best technology.
It does.
Now, okay, so how did you get started in this? Because it's fascinating that you got to this place, mm-hmm. but this isn't your average, hey, this is what I want to do when I grow up story. So tell me about it.
Exactly. That's a great question. So I have a little bit of a back end to that.
Okay.
So for me, growing up, I started volunteering since high school. And so I have always wanted to work with people, and especially in areas where we can help improve lives, whatever that may be. And so volunteerism eventually led me into leadership positions. And so through that, fast forward, I was able to meet different government bodies, meet, different private businesses, so entrepreneurs, and a lot of them were doing international business.
Right.
And so I would meet a few investors, developers that were interested in going to the African market. But one theme that was reoccurring was we want to go, but we don't know where to start or who to, approach to go with.
Yeah.
So naturally, I saw an opportunity. I think I was telling you earlier where I feel blessed to have these two brains,
right.
An African brain and a Canadian brain. So on both sides, I saw, the challenges, which there are many. But for me, I see solutions.
Right.
And so it seemed like a no-brainer to connect the two worlds. And so that's how in 2020, I decided to open up my company.
And it's based here in Airdrie.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I don't think many people would know that we have an international business for investments here in Airdrie.
I suppose not. Yeah.
Well, they do now. So if you're listening, check it out. One thing I wanted to talk about too is, people tend to think of Africa naively as a continent and one moving body, but it's not. It's made up of individual countries that have individual flares and individual strengths and weaknesses. What are some countries that we should be looking at from an investment point of view that maybe weren't on people's radar 10 years ago?
Right. And so anyone can go on Google and do a quick search.
Right.
But you'll find out that Africa, like you said, is massive. 54 countries on the continent. Very diverse when you're looking at political, religious, culture, all of that, languages. So for us, we're focused heavily on Eastern Africa.
Okay.
So, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, even the Congo. But then there are certain ones like Gabon or Sierra Leone, where South Sudan, where a lot of people wouldn't actually, think of going there just because of the political instability and some of those challenges. But again, with right networks and connections, those countries have opportunities that are often overlooked.
Yeah.
We've had clients where we've supported in South Sudan. When a lot of people hear about that, it's a complicated market, but done right, there are opportunities.
I think you could tell by the change in my demeanor that people are investing in South Sudan. I want to know more about that. So one of the newest countries in the world, and one that has been fraught with political instability almost since its inception. Talk to me about the opportunity that's there.
Exactly. One thing that comes to mind is with technologies. One of the things that, is really damaging the country, for example, is during elections, let's say, just like in many other countries also, there's a lot of tampering with voter and election systems. And so one of the things that there's an opportunity for is actually to bring in infrastructure technology that would then enable a more proper voting system.
Right.
So something like that would be, and then also agriculture.
Right.
Food security is also a challenge. And so for, technologies and those in the agriculture field, there are just great opportunities. And so I can go on all day about all the different countries and needs, but energy, again, across the continent, that is a need that is definitely there. And so for anybody in, especially renewable energy, because we do have an abundance of that, whether it's wind, the sun, there are just many opportunities for developers in that area.
That's going to make me think for a little bit about where my investment dollars are going, because that sounds like a great opportunity, but it also sounds like you can feel good about where your money's going in a way too, because investing in South Sudan, investing in developing nations helps pull them out of some of the struggles that they're in.
Absolutely.
Because, you don't want to lose the industry. So people don't argue and don't fight as much. Have you seen that effect happen in a country that's a really good example of a country that's used industry and used development to kind of stabilize and rise above some of the challenges that they've encountered?
Ooh, that's a very interesting and important question. Not particularly to, technology with the voter system that I've mentioned, but definitely for communications,
right.
Where, we've had one of our CTO actually do some analysis in an Eastern African country where their networks were quite terrible. And so for post-secondary. Yeah. And so with support of that, technology integration, there are better systems that were put in place in that capacity building that I was talking about. Yeah. They have their systems, right? They have their people in technology, but then there's a lot of information and a lot of knowledge sharing that goes on in such a project.
Wow, that's really cool. To piggyback off that, so you have countries that have used the industry to pull themselves up. Where do you see Africa in the next 30 years? Because this conversation, all you have to do is follow the international money, right? Like China is spending billions in Africa trying to get as many hooks in there as they can with the Belt and Road. Is it Belt and Road Initiative? I believe I might be getting that wrong. So if I am wrong, edit it out. But where do you see Africa being in the next 30 years?
Wow, 30 years is a long ways. I can tell you that.
Okay, let's narrow it down to 10 years.
Even in 10 years, honestly, I see a lot of development in energy. Right. There's a lot happening with energy. So I see that most homes, most communities will have some type of energy infrastructure. Wow. So I think that's going to be one area that's going to be an improvement in. I'm also going to see a lot of diversity just in all the different sectors, right. Because there is a lot of interest and attraction from the international world. The one thing that has been changing, and I'm going to see that's also going to be very different, is the way that money is moving around Africa. Yeah. So Africa has been known by the world as an aid, we'll call it continent, where, everybody's just relying on aid in order for them to develop. But that has actually changed quite a lot. Yeah. And most of the funding that's happening on the continent is through the African Development Bank, which a lot of people don't know. Right. And so I see a little bit more of a self-sustained, sustainable Africa.
Well, that could shake up the geopolitical landscape considerably.
We'll see what will happen.
Well, that's really
it could,
exciting.
Yeah.
Are there many people in this space? Do you have a lot of competition, or are you kind of carving out a niche market here?
It is definitely a niche market. I wouldn't say that there are a lot of people doing the type of consulting work that we're doing, advisory, but I think that there definitely are more. Investors, developers, they can also get supports through the government, actually. Right. Because Trade Commissioner Services, they do something similar where they offer a lot of services. But in terms of private companies, I don't see a lot, but there is a lot happening. I'm hearing more and more of such opportunities. Absolutely.
And as we get to kind of a new world order when it comes to trade, some of your reliable partners that have been reliable for 200 years may or may not be reliable anymore. As case in point with the United States and the tariff situation, countries will be looking for new places to invest. Are there countries further ahead than Canada?
On the continent?
Yeah.
I would say in the global, what is the word? In finance, I would say. The way that money is used and moved around on the continent is much more advanced than any other countries. Okay. So we have, people, regardless of the communities that they're in, mobile money is something that is heavily used on the continent. And so it's even more challenging. I remember I had to transfer some money to a consultant in the US. And so our systems, even between Canada and the US, very different.
Very hard.
We have Interact Transfer. they don't use that. So they use different types of money. So you have to do like the global transfer or other ways. It's easier for me to send money to Africa.
Yeah, I found that the same. I have friends in Cuba that I send money back to all the time. And I was trying to send money to somebody across the States. And I'm like, why can I send this to Havana better than I can Miami? Like, it's insane.
Exactly. So there are definitely other countries that are ahead and on the continent.
Okay. And then when you talk about the next industry, what do you think the next industry to take over Africa is? If you've talked about communications, you've talked about energy, what's next?
So even just general infrastructure, the buildings of roads, that development, I think that one also. And then food security, so agriculture. Yeah. There is a lot of technology, a lot of development when it comes to food security. And that's appropriate, not just for the continent, but I think also just all over the world. Yeah. So I think that is going to be something. And then there's definitely the workarounds, moving food around. But I believe that people, brilliant minds, they're doing a lot in terms of, food being able to last longer. Right. Just because, transporting, the continent is far. Yeah. And so by the time food reaches here, right? I mean, with our neighbors next door, food can move quite a lot faster. Right. And so there's going to have to be technologies in how we can get food around the world so that it reaches in still a very, good state.
On one of my other podcasts, I had Simon Sony on. He was talking about he's a catering legend for airlines, one of the brightest minds when it comes to planning a menu. And he said one of the biggest challenges they have is shelf-stable food and getting food that tastes good, that can last for the transportation and all that. So It's very transferable here, that it's kind of a similar logistical problem.
Absolutely.
Right. So, now, do you have companies that you're able to talk about that are at the forefront here investing in Africa? If not, you don't.
No, I won't mention specific names, but there are definitely various sectors. Education is the other one to look up for, I believe.
Tell me more.
So historically, in Africa, a lot of parents that have the capital, they send their children abroad to study. Yeah. Whether that be Canada, US, wherever it may be. And then also government. There's a lot of programs, a lot of systems that do require, workers to travel for. So I believe with a lot of the changes in education technology, that there are going to be more internationally recognized, I believe, programs on the continent, which will then ensure that, a lot of the students, government workers or whoever it may be, they would stay on the continent, because I'm starting to see that, and we've supported some in that field as well.
Yeah, so the brain drain isn't as pronounced and dramatic.
That too, yes, absolutely. But also keeping the local talent to develop the continent. Right. Because now, especially, let's say, for example, oil and gas sector, there are definitely some courses that are not available. But now there are, because a lot of the organizations that are, handing out the certifications, they've looked at an opportunity and they're able to have those programs delivered on the continent.
When you bring up oil and gas, I'm reminded of just the Alberta struggle here of being just a resource pit, basically. So people come, they take oil and gas, they refine it, and then they sell it back to us. How does Africa avoid that? With such an abundance of resources, you don't want to just be the place where people go for rare earth minerals or oil or gas or whatever. How do you avoid that? And I have a feeling it's that infrastructure and that building up of the industry around it.
Absolutely. Lots of that capacity building and just understanding, the strength in having whether it's the education, the programming done on the continent. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but definitely we're going to see that. We're seeing that some countries are restricting the movement of resources out of, certain cities or countries, right. Because Africa still is developing in a lot of areas, right? Yeah. So processing, manufacturing, a lot of those can happen on the continent. Right. And so rather than taking unfinished products, why not have it processed on the continent? Because that's going to add more value. And it's also going to create jobs and keep people working right there.
And then, if people are working and creating jobs, it's more money to build more infrastructure and to keep developing the continent up.
That's the way it goes, or should go. Yeah.
Well, that's a really exciting field. I don't get to talk to many people that are in a field that completely shocks me. So I didn't know this was going on in Airdrie. How big is your company?
Mm-hmm. So we actually work quite lean.
Yeah.
Actively working, there are 3 of us. We have advisors and consultants. So we contract out, and we have a lot of our consultants actually on the continent. Cool. So we do keep it lean. And our approach, honestly, back to relationships that we were talking about. So strategic partnerships is what we work with. We get the most value, and there's just so much better work done that way.
So how does a company who's interested in doing business in Africa get in touch with you?
Mm-hmm. So you can reach us out, awellostrategicconcepts.com. Okay. I'm also on LinkedIn, Doreen Ayorech. You can reach out, or Doreen at awellostrategicconcept.com. Okay. So we can be reached out that way. Send an email, send a message on LinkedIn. We can get connected, set up a call, and then we'll see where we can take it.
And one other question, do your partners in Africa, are they actively working the other way, right? Like, so we have companies looking to invest in Africa. Are there African companies or African countries actively working to bring Canadian companies to the continent?
We don't particularly focus on that, but that movement is also happening. We've actually supported a company where Canadian company, they were going to the continent, and because of the field that they're in, it's to move, people in the other direction.
Oh, wow.
So that also is happening. There are some, for example, I'm blanking out now, but there are some companies or some people, investors, that actually come to Canada and buy businesses.
Wow.
So there is a movement on the other side as well.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. Doreen, thank you so much for coming in and talking to me today. This has been great.
It's been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And again, if you're looking to invest, you know where to go. And we'll be back with more great podcasts coming up.